everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Unclassified podcast. We are currently at a stage 17 crisis, and we're going to get into that in a second. But if you like the podcast, give it a like, give us a comment, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, leave a nice review. And now, onto our crisis here. The President of the United States has infringed on our copyright and or our trademark, or both. And so yesterday, let me just explain why the podcast is late, and it'll also tie into how we're suing the president. So yesterday I was having a fine day. I had this golf benefit I had to do. Preston was protesting, and we were having a wonderful day. And then all of a sudden, my phone rings, and I see that the president has tweeted, and he has used the unclassified thumbnail, which, as you can see here on the screen. But for people who are listening, the unclassified thumbnail here, it is, it's green, and it has unclassified on the top. So he has that. It's published exactly like that. And that is an infringement on our intellectual property that Preston and I created up. We brainstormed it. And so apparently, though, folks, when I was telling Preston that we should DMCA the president or send him a cease and desist, there is a wrinkle that I am unaware of in my rage that I posted everywhere to let everyone know that the president will be hearing from me. Apparently, there is a wrinkle in it. And I told Preston to save it for the intro today. So, Preston, what is the wrinkle in our potential lawsuit here against the president infringing on our intellectual property?
You're going to have to shop this lawsuit. I won't bring it. See if there's anybody else that'll take this forward. The issue is, and I couldn't tell if Ben was messing with me or not. I'm still not entirely sure. The creativity of coming up with the unclassified logo is, I just pulled that off of like unclassified document. That is the marking. Green with that font, black lettering is the marking on unclassified documents in the U.S. government. So I thought, like, that's the name of the podcast. That's a great way to do it. And I thought, it stands out in thumbnails and kind of pops a little bit, and people kind of in the know that recognize, we've got, let's see, secret would be red. I want to say top secret is orange. Same thing, a block across with a black lettering in it. I thought, hey, that would be kind of cool for people that are like, anybody who's been in the military has seen a lot of stuff with that top or that unclassified marking. So, that's why it looks so similar.
So we're the infringers.
I wouldn't see that's why we can't get into discovery on this one, because it starts to open those doors and like, how did you decide on this exact color? Like, I matched the color. How did you decide on this exact font? I matched the font. So.
The good news here is that my tweets and my Instagram posts about this infringement on our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness do kind of come off as jokes, so that's good. But my text, in my group text with my friends, I was pretty mad. I was like, screw this guy.
I got some notes about it. I had notes that people say, like, I can't believe the president is using your thumbnail. I was like, well.
Yeah. I had someone tweet at me saying they did a double take when they saw it. And I was like, yeah, that's proof enough. That is proof enough. But, okay, so there's no infringement, I guess. We infringed. I guess the government doesn't have intellectual property, but we infringed on their old-time practice.
Yeah, here's the deal. We can't do it. We can't follow through on this because discovery will be nasty. They'll find out that I just straight copied the unclassified markings. And then in the process of that, they'll be able to look at the phone records and see that you were texting me while I was at the Murfreesboro No Kings protest yesterday.
Yes.
And NSPM 7 is going to be a problem, and I'm going to be doing this from behind bars for the next few years. So let's just not.
How was your protest, by the way? How was it? I saw here in Chicago we had 100,000. In New York, they had 500,000. A lot of people. How many you have in Murfreesboro? Were there a lot of people there? A lot of energy?
Yeah, I don't know how to quantify like it was cool. It was just all American flags. Ran into a West Point grad right when I got there, 1970 graduate. Bunch of guys with their old unit Army shirts on and things like that. Marine Corps flags. People were pretty creative with their signs. I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of outlets for kind of like comedic creativity, and like it showed in some of those signs. People like poured it in, and a lot of it was pretty funny. Peaceful, quiet. Not quiet. It's not the right word. Cars were honking the whole time. in support, I would say. Yeah, it was cool. We were there for probably about an hour. I just kind of walked up and down the line a couple different times to just kind of see how it was going. And at one point, there was there was no counter protest. And I should mention that Murfreesboro is actually pretty dark red. So this area of kind of middle Tennessee is what we call it. I want to say it went like plus 30 for Trump in the last election. Wow. So that's pretty that's pretty right. Man, I'd say there were a couple hundred people there. Megan went to the last one. I did not. So I can't, it's hard for me to compare sizes. But it seemed like a lot of people. And you know what they did have that I thought was really, first off, like I kind of made a joke in a video. I didn't see Antifa, was looking for them. Didn't see Hamas, was looking for them. Just a lot of people with American flags. One thing I noticed I thought was really smart is they had volunteers there, and the volunteers were walking around picking up trash during the event.
That is smart.
Anything on the ground, and they were picking up stuff. They walked by us and picked some stuff up that like clearly had been there for a while. Like it's outside, it's in the middle of the city. There's just trash on the ground, and they were picking up like old cigarette butts. It's like that's a really smart move because then the minute this disperses, somebody could take a picture and say, "Look at the protesters! They ruined the city." And like, no, I mean, we left before it ended, but I'm sure it was pretty tidy by the time it wrapped up. But yeah, cool experience. It was just a good feeling, I would say, as an American, wherever you fall on. People were there for all sorts of different reasons, right? And you could see this on the signs. Some people were there. Some had some very focused signs on ICE and immigration. Others were more focused on like the Epstein files. People were talking about the congresswoman that has not yet been sworn in. So a lot of different reasons that people were there, and whichever one of those you align with or don't, I think it's pretty cool that, from what I can tell, people around the country came together for something they believed in a peaceful, nonviolent manner, made their voices heard, and went back home. Like, I think that's awesome. That doesn't happen everywhere around the world. I mean, we spend a lot of time on this show talking about countries where that kind of stuff cannot happen, or territories where that cannot happen at all. So, proud day as an American that we're able to do that.
It is wonderful. I was filled with hope seeing everybody out there, and I believe it was the single largest day protest in American history, at 8 million, which is crazy. And they're getting close. I mean, it's growing. It more than doubled from last time around. So that's exciting. But Preston, while you were there, our friend was having a meltdown, posting photos of himself in crowns, and late last night posting a video of him in an F-16, or no, an F-18, dumping literal poop on the protesters. Thoughts?
Yeah, it was interesting. It does look like it looks like the administration kind of veered into this all in of like trolling, mocking, a lot of pictures and AI and stuff of Trump as a king. I don't know how well that'll play, to be honest. I know these events were portrayed as like far left extremist. Like, again, man, it's pretty conservative area here in Middle Tennessee, and I saw a bunch of normal people yesterday. Like,
yeah,
I don't know that the independent voters that both parties are always trying to court, like, I don't know that they saw some of those videos and they're like, hell yeah, now I'm there. Like, that won me over. I'm sure it played well to an aspect of the base of the Trump supporters that are there, like, thick and thin, no matter what. But I think the reason that these, again, I was saying, just like the signs that were there were all over the place, right? It was a number of different things that drew people out. I don't know that, I don't know that, painting it as Antifa or terrorist or Hamas or anti-American fits, because everything that these people on their signs at least were saying in Murfreesboro, right? And I have a very small sample size, was like legitimate things. Where are the Epstein files? Like, what's up with the Epstein files? We're just going to forget about that. It's stuff like that I feel like probably resonates more. It's just, I don't know. It feels to me like there's this common sense piece of like, you can trash somebody for asking that question, but it does seem like a pretty rational question. Like, they're not crazy to say, like, why on earth are these files that were so important a few months ago all of a sudden not important? It seems to me like more people, that passes the common sense test than AI videos dumping shit over a crowd of Americans. So I don't know. It seems like further entrenchment within the base, maybe, would be the way I'd put that.
I think, like, I felt overnight, well, I didn't feel it, but I saw overnight that there were just, magnitude 8 earthquakes all over Virginia and New England, because the founders are trying to come back to life, and, well, I can't, I had to be careful.
Can't stick with it?
I was going to say what I was going to say, but I was like, maybe legally I can't say this, but the founders would be, if Donald Trump was alive and during George Washington and Hamilton and Madison's time, they would have tarred and feathered him and threw him into the Chesapeake Bay, calling himself the king, putting a crown on himself. I mean, come on, what are we doing here?
A part of me thinks that organizing more of these, there's a side where it's, what does it do, right? What does it accomplish? But I think the messaging after it actually is really interesting because, and maybe I'm not in the majority here, but I'm hard pressed to look at a group of Americans going outside waving flags saying we love this country and we want this country to, people yesterday were saying, like, due process, you have to have due process. It was like, how edgy of you, right? Like,
how evil.
That's what their sign says, is like due process is a right. It's like, all right, I'm going to stand on that side. I feel like that's a good argument to make. A lot of, like, treat people with respect, and or immigrants are people too, right? Like, and I feel like the folks having to take the stand that this was radical and or these are stupid people, or they're idiots, or they're brainwashed, or that's a tough stance to take, especially when there's no violence, when there's, who cares what people are protesting over if it's peaceful and they're out there making their voice heard. Like, that's what we do as a country. And I think the more people that try to get on the side of arguing that it's stupid or a bad thing, I think that's probably going to sour more of the country against that. If that makes sense.
I fully agree. I also think there is an inherent truth here, and that is every American knows what is happening is bad. There are those who are okay. Or no, let me say, they know what's happening is authoritarianism. There is nobody who disagrees with that. Everyone knows. It's just a difference of whether or not you are anxious about it and you don't like it, or you support it, right? I don't think there's anyone in the country at this point who's looking at this and going, oh, this isn't authoritarianism, right? No. Everyone knows what we're looking at. It's just a matter of whether or not you think that will play to you, whether or not you think you'll be on the winning side of it. But no one's ever on the winning side of it.
That's a good way to put it, because if you swap this up and it was Biden or Obama, again, the great example of sending Illinois National Guard troops into Texas, like, that would not be viewed as an appropriate response to crime. It would be viewed as an authoritarian move. So I think that's a good point, that it does more and more seem like almost there's a block in there of, like, it's a block because I like or I think it might work out well in my favor. I saw people yesterday posting memes about Trump being a king, where if there was any hint that Biden or Harris or Obama would have been king, they would have taken to the streets with firearms, right? But now it's funny and a joke, and like, or maybe it actually would be a good idea. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. But unless you have anything else to say about No Kings, do you want to get into Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump?
Let's do that. I in my walking around, I was actually looking for some things up our alley. There wasn't a lot of, from what I could tell, I didn't see people with signs or talking about troops in American cities, which is, of course, something we've been talking a lot about. I didn't see any Ukraine flags or Russia flags, fortunately. Those stayed. Not going to make the joke. Not going to make the joke. We'll get to that about Secretary Hegseth's tie. Didn't see any Ukraine flags. Didn't see any Israel flags. Did see one Palestine flag, and it was a guy that just kept chanting over and over again, "Free, free Palestine." It was like one dude. So I was kind of looking for things that kind of fit in with what we normally talk about, and it just wasn't there. It was all American flags, man.
Yeah.
But either way, this did happen amidst some pretty significant developments. Were you following the White House conversations there?
Unfortunately, I didn't see the full Zelensky meeting, but I did get the notes from it, the Spark Notes version of it, and I did see that we are no longer giving Tomahawks to Russia. Have you ever seen Ghostbusters?
It's been a while.
Okay, so I watched it recently, and I was like, I like this Bill Murray guy. So then I watched Groundhog Day, and all of a sudden I understood all the Groundhog Day references people make because I saw the tweet from Trump talking about he can't do Tomahawks, he's going to meet with Putin in Budapest for peace. And I was like, this is Groundhog Day. And I was like, it all makes sense now. So please take us away here.
I'm not entirely sure why Zelensky and the delegation came to the United States. We're going to gloss over that real quick here.
Yes.
But keep in mind, this is a president fighting a war day in and day out. And it kind of looks like they brought him here just to say, we're not going to do what we told you we were going to do or suggested we were going to do. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk with Putin. So there was actually a pretty big back and forth just this week. There was a NATO event where Secretary Hegseth, I would argue, came out probably the most hawkish we've heard from him during this administration. He mentioned that if there's no viable path to peace, then the United States, along with our allies, are going to take necessary actions to impose costs on Russia. He said the Department of War stands ready to take those actions. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, we're actually... Now, that probably meant maybe targeting assistance or sending weapons. That is not, we're about to send troops into Ukraine. But it's pretty hawkish. Talked about sending more weapons and kind of, winking a nod that it might be Tomahawks even. New capabilities, greater capabilities coming in the near term. Then Trump called Putin, or Putin called Trump. They set up that call, and the outcome of that was some Russian officials said, look, Putin told him Tomahawks aren't going to change the situation on the battlefield, but they will hurt our relations. And next thing you know, those are off the table. And we are back to square one, man. The outcome of this meeting, Zelensky gave a press conference afterwards, and you could tell he was dejected. He said, we're not going to talk about long-range munitions because that could be escalatory, and the United States doesn't want escalation, so we're not going to be talking about that. Which is like very similar to what Lavrov said when Tomahawks came up. Like very, very similar. And it just makes you think that was probably what was seeded in Trump's mind. That's what he relayed to Zelensky. There's some reporting coming out now that Witkoff may have also proposed Ukraine handing over Donetsk again in exchange for portions of Zaporizhia and Kherson. So when I say we're back to square one, it's like the last 9 months almost didn't happen. Putin has 2 weeks on or about. They're putting together an in-person meeting, supposedly in Budapest. I don't know if you saw this. The Huffington Post asked the White House, why Budapest? Because, of course, that's of all places to hold it. There's some not great history with Budapest memorandums in this context. And the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to the question of who proposed Budapest, and she said, your mom, to the HuffPost. So we don't really know who proposed it. That's the extent of the reporting we have on it, but that's where it sits. So when I say back to square one or Groundhog Day, Ben, it is genuinely like nothing has changed over the course of the last 9 months, except the United States has stopped providing direct military assistance to Ukraine. We have not layered any new sanctions on Russia, and I would argue at times we are pressuring Ukraine more than ever to give up territory in exchange for peace.
So I wouldn't even say it's like the past 9 months didn't happen. I would say it's like the past 2 months didn't happen because I feel like we've done the cycle like 6 times.
Yeah.
I feel like we have multiple episodes of this podcast called Trump loves Ukraine again for real this time, and Trump hates Ukraine. This happens like every 2 months. It's crazy to me that we have gone back to square one, especially after the details of the Alaska meeting came out. I'm not sure if you saw those between Trump and Putin, but Putin basically did to Trump what he did to Tucker Carlson, and he kept telling Trump about ancient history. And Trump allegedly, according to the Financial Times, raised his voice several times and threatened to walk out if he didn't stop talking about this ancient Russian history. So
I would too.
I am surprised that this is still going. How many reassurances does he need? Marco Rubio must be beating his head against the wall. I just don't know why it seems like we get so close and then we go all the way back to square one. What does he think he's going to get out of?
What's happening here is, in my opinion, I've had people ask, you should have somebody on to talk about kind of foreign policy or Ukraine policy or Israel policy from the administration's point of view. My pushback is I don't think there is an administration point of view. I think they want to resolve things quickly, and they try a couple different things to resolve those, but there's no long-term strategic thinking. Because let's just look at Ukraine and Russia. I cannot find how we are closer to some sort of agreement today than we were when the Trump administration came into office. And it's, to your point, because we go up and we go down. We go sideways and we go sideways. There was a period of time where we were layering pressure on Ukraine. I didn't like it. I think that was the wrong move, but we stopped. And then we started providing intel to Ukraine for deep strikes inside of Russia and sent over a couple extra Patriots or facilitated that, and now are helping European allies buy more weapons to send to Ukraine. Right? We talk sanctions to give Putin 2 more weeks, and then we dial it back. There's no consistency. It is one step forward, one step back, constantly. And so of course there's no progress. I don't know that there's a strategy for us to follow. I think the way that I'm viewing, and I think we're seeing this play out in Venezuela as well, and I know we're going to get into that today, is I feel like a lot of the Trump 2.0 foreign policy is taking a shot in the dark, seeing what happens, kind of shaking things up, and sometimes the results are something we can work with. Other times they're not. And it seems like all of the little attempts we've taken with Russia and Ukraine have not resulted in any meaningful change, and we just keep doing the same thing.
Yes. Yeah, we keep doing the same thing. We're going to do this talk thing every 2 months now, and it's going to get us nowhere. I am just kind of puzzled. I mean, how does he think this is going to work? And as in the backdrop of this, Mr. Peacemaker, the ceasefire's already fallen apart in Gaza, right? So it is entirely puzzling to me. It feels like we were trapped in the same 4 news stories on loop.
Yeah, and to be clear, this plays to Russia's benefit.
Yeah.
So there's different scenarios here. Depending on each one of these conflicts, sometimes it's clear-cut that a longer conflict benefits one side or the other. Other times, not so much. This is one where a longer conflict, I would say at least 60% benefits Russia. And the reason for that, look, the Russian economy is taking some damage. They are losing a shocking amount of personnel. I saw some stats recently on how those numbers are stacking up. They're averaging something like 150 people killed per day over the course of the last few months. That is insane, Ben.
Yeah.
Like the casualties that they're, and we're seeing it too. This is not just some magical number pulled out of thin air. I can pull up videos right now showing you probably 150 people killed yesterday. It's insane. So Russia is suffering the longer this goes on, but Ukraine is going to have a real challenge of maintaining their sovereignty and staying in this fight without Western support. We have seen it already start to dwindle significantly, but it's still there to a degree. The longer Russia drags this on, I think it's pretty clear-cut. Russia cares more about Ukraine than the West, and the United States especially cares about Ukraine. So the longer they can drag this on, the more likely it is they're going to be taking on Ukraine and Zelensky without the direct support or any sort of support from the West. That's a major Russian advantage. So this back and forth 2 meetings shit, it is helping Russia, full stop.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt. And it seems as though we are, like you said, there is no foreign policy here. We're just walking blind and doing nothing while continuing to talk about, well, I guess actually doing nothing, right? And the Republican senators, they have the sanctions bill in the Senate. They have the votes for it, but they won't vote for it. And it's driving me mad. I don't know. They keep saying, well, it's up to Trump, and Trump says, well, it's there when I'm ready. Just pass it. Pass it and force him to sign it. It is that easy. And I am puzzled as to why these Republican senators who have these tweets that read as though they are in Russia themselves, right, where they say, oh, well, President Trump's leadership is instrumental to the peace process. This sanctions bill will help us alleviate everything. Just sign it. He has, 30 days, 60 days to sign it at that point? So they need to just do it.
Again, you're kind of talking procedure here, and we need to recognize that it's that President Trump is not going to sign. That's the deal here. They don't want to put something. They don't want to put something. Well, they don't want to put something forward that he would not agree to. That's not crazy in government. That's kind of generally how it works. So we have the Congress people covering their tracks saying we have built this wonderful sanctions package that is going to do all of these things so we can continue to be tough on Russia. The reason it is not being pushed forward is because President Trump is not going to sign it.
Well, my argument there is that if they want to get something done, if they care about the United States, you pass it, force them to veto it, you have the numbers to override the veto. Right?
That's not how our government works today, though. Again, I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense. But get out of here. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's overriding. No Republican is overriding a Trump veto. It's not happening.
No, you're right. You're right. And what's crazy is that this did happen in his first term, but I think it is a sign of how far we've fallen that he did veto a Trump sanctions bill or a Russian sanctions bill in his first term, and they overrode his veto and applied them anyways. So hopefully get on that. What is really starting to bother me is, and you have to let me know if this is still happening, is 3-4 months ago we saw Hegseth say that the United States is no longer going to sell weapons to its European allies. Right? He was saying this. Right now we have a record number of orders from Europe to buy our weapons. Is that still true? Is he still saying we're not going to sell these weapons to Ukraine, to our European allies?
I don't remember him saying we were not going to sell weapons to them.
It was during or maybe it was J.D. Vance. It was one of them. It's like Cheech and Chong.
And maybe in an interview or something they rambled on that, but I don't think that's been the policy. It's not how things are playing out right now. We have this Pearl initiative, which stands for the Priority Ukraine Requirements List or something like that. And essentially we open up the books and say, like, who wants to buy equipment from us? We'll make it, and you can give it to Ukraine. It's not clear entirely what the benefit of that is. Maybe it speeds up the process of, say Sweden saying, yeah, we're going to buy those interceptors. We're not keeping them. We're shipping them straight through Poland to Ukraine. Maybe that process would be longer otherwise. And in this case, it's expedited. There's been about $2 billion go through that just in the last month, which is great. But to be clear, we have stopped all U.S. military assistance to Ukraine.
Yep.
And in place of that, we are doing this. I believe there may have been a couple follow-on packages sent, like in the last 30 days, but it's a fraction. A fraction of what we've previously sent, and quite frankly, a fraction of what Ukraine needs. So we have seen a pretty significant shift into selling the weapons to our allies, but it's going to take a while to get to where that's actually needed, or the quantity.
Well, yeah. And are we still giving intelligence, at least? Or is that done too?
From what we can tell, there were reports in the last couple of weeks that we've been assisting with deep strikes inside of Russia, which would be great. That would be a positive step, and something that was sorely lacking under the Biden administration. We hamstrung Ukraine by giving them weapon systems that could reach a certain range and telling them, but you can't actually use them to that certain range. You can't engage operationally significant targets because they happen to be a few miles inside the Russian border, even though those operational targets are striking Ukraine on a daily basis. Horrible execution there from the Biden administration. It sounds like we have begun assisting in some intelligence of how to best. So the reporting that I saw is Ukraine says, here's these 6 targets we want to hit, oil refineries mostly. The United States then helps with our intelligence assets to help them track a route through Russian territory to evade air defense assets and electronic warfare, and then provides assistance on maybe weaknesses of where that target is located. So certain areas, you hit a refinery in area 1 or 2, it might be down for a week. Area 3 or 4 might be down for a month. So the U.S. is assisting in that regard, which is positive. That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And so what do you think comes out of the Budapest talks? Do you think we are back to square one? Do you think Trump gets another lecture about, some random Russian figure's bisexual phase in college, or what?
I mean, fool me once, shame on me.
Shame
fool
on
me
you.
twice, right? Or whatever the hell the saying is.
What did Bush say? He said, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on me. Shame on you? What is? And then he, anyways, just like me, he didn't remember what to say. He goes,
too, yeah.
"Fool me, I can't get fooled again." Yes.
Well, I don't think there's any, a betting man could not look at this and say that anything is going to change. There's just no way to assume that this time is going to be different or why it's going to be different. There's no indications from the Russian side that anything has changed at all over the course of the last 9 months. So I've argued in a recent video, like the reason for these sanctions, the reason to send additional weapons is to force one side of the negotiating table. They're not there right now. President Trump, getting off the plane the other day, said, both sides should just stop. Draw the line where it is, or it gets too complicated. And the thing is, great idea, both sides won't stop. Neither side has an incentive to stop right now. For Ukraine, that's tied up in security guarantees and making sure that Russia doesn't just do this again, like in a matter of months, let alone years. For Russia, they have yet to take territory that they claim is part of their country. How are they going to sell that to the Russian people? They haven't even taken Donetsk yet. Meanwhile, they have not accomplished any of their war aims. So there's no incentive for either side right now, and they're chugging along. They've transitioned over to a war economy, so they're a little more resilient than we necessarily expected at the beginning. They've certainly strengthened ties with some of their allies around the world. It's hard. Neither side right now is ready to come to the negotiating table just because. So that's why sanctions and more weapons matter. You actually push them. So long way around to saying, no, nothing is going to change at that meeting. Like maybe something magical happens, but realistically, there's no indication that anything has changed at all. So why should we expect a different outcome?
Do we have
it's
any
so stupid,
idea?
man. I'm sorry. It's just so stupid. We're just doing the same thing over and over again. It's just show. It doesn't matter. Like, it's a meeting for meeting's sake. It's the same thing in Alaska. Putin got this wonderful meeting. He went home. The Russian people were like, wow, look, we're still relevant on the world stage. And, like, we got nothing out of it. It's the same thing again. It is embarrassing that we keep going down this path. Like, we're the strong country here. We are. The United States. We are bigger, stronger, more militarily capable, more militarily advanced than Russia. We have those capabilities. We have NATO on our side if we decide to come down harder against Russia. And we are just not leveraging any of that. And we haven't for a long time. I'm pretty tired of the fact that we are constantly worried about how Russia is going to react to something. How about Russia gets worried how we react? Where's that?
Amen. Amen. We got to clip that. Amen. I could not agree. I couldn't agree even further. I mean, that is the most perfect thing you've ever said. I agree. And it is crazy to me that Russia is like a paper tiger right now. If you tip them over, they'll fall. Although I don't really think that's how the paper tiger analogy works. But, they're like a Jenga tower. You pull out a few blocks, they're going to fall. And we just aren't doing it. And it is mind-boggling to me as to why. And part of it is that the administration is, for whatever reason, well, actually, I'll tell you what the reason is. I'm not even going to be vague. The opposition to helping Ukraine solely resides in three things. So, number one, in Trump's first term, he was impeached for blackmailing Ukraine. So there's always this perpetual beef with Zelensky now because he did not capitulate to the president. Number two, he has always had these weird Russia things going on with the loans from the Russian states when American banks want to lend to him anymore, to his visit to the Soviet Union. All of it. Trump's always had this weird Russia thing going on. And number three, he has this obsession with being a peacemaker. And I don't know who told him this. He didn't win it this time. He's not going to win it next year. And I don't know why he's obsessed with this. I don't know why he cares, because he's not a peacemaker. He's literally blowing up boats in the Caribbean as we speak. He bombed Iran. And he has troops. Well, they're not deployed in Portland and Chicago yet, but inshallah. And I don't get why we just don't go forward with this. It is mind-bogglingly stupid to me. And it has occurred to me that as much shit as Jared Kushner and as John Kelly and Mattis and everyone else in the first administration was given for still, as we called at the time, enabling Trump, it turns out, first and foremost, they were keeping the rails on, right? They were keeping this dude on the rails, and kept us doing things, right? Kept us keeping the pressure on Russia, keeping the pressure on everyone. And now it just seems like all the rails are off, and we're just letting this demented old man play city skylines with our actual cities and chicken out against doing anything against Russia. I agree. We should not be backing down right now. They're a pathetic power, and we need to press them hard. And I'm not saying we need to invade Russia. I'm just saying they don't get to make what the rules are, right? We also have nuclear weapons, and everyone always falls back to the nuclear weapons. We also have them. Who cares? If it happens, it happens. I just think there's... Hold on. Wait, let me clarify. If it does happen, it was already baked in from day one, right? So that's where I stand on it. I just think it's... Okay. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah, part of what gets me here is I had a lot of conversations with people over the course of the last few years that were opposed to any assistance of Ukraine. And a lot of times it boiled down to we shouldn't be spending money abroad. And I'll see that in videos. We'll send over a howitzer to Ukraine, and somebody will say, "How could this have helped the flood victims in North Carolina?" Or we'll provide some Abrams tanks, and somebody will say, "Imagine what that could have done for veteran homelessness." Which, like, there's been a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of people doing this publicly, and I've had these conversations in private too. But and the argument has been we can better spend that money. We need to prioritize the American people, and I understand that. Like, I am receptive to that argument. I think it's misplaced a bit, thinking that we can make old artillery shells into like veteran resources on the streets. That's not we can't do that. We can't melt those down and turn them into something for our veteran homeless problem. But I understand the desire of we need to focus more at home, and I think that's totally justified. We're giving Venezuela a $20 billion bailout, and this just happened. We just like woke up one day and we're like $20 billion to Venezuela. I can't. This is where, when we're getting into the strategy thing, and I say there is no strategy, we just kind of do stuff. This is part of it. Like, well, hold on. Are we focused? Like, look, if this has more of a direct impact on the American people today, cool. I'm not super tied into this. I'd love to hear that argument. There was no debate. It just happened. And I don't know. I mean, we've seen it around the world in multiple cases now where, like, it was all about just focusing here at home in the United States, but not really. It was more just, I guess, Ukraine bad because Biden or something.
It is the whole thing about let's not spend money on Ukraine or whatever and give the money here at home has always been, in my view, and pardon my French, a crock of shit. Because it has, number one, while we did give financial aid in the form of cash, majority of this was coming through things that were already made, as you said, right? How are you going to turn artillery shells into aid for veterans, right? So that's always been full of shit. But now they're also in power, and they're not spending the money as Congress has appropriated, money that would help the American people, and they're also spending it in ways they're not supposed to. They're violating the law both ways when it comes to appropriations. They don't care. They don't care. They don't want to spend the money here. They're now in charge. They have cut off aid to Ukraine, and what do we get from it? Somehow, our budget is less than it was last year. Everyone's got tax cuts. They've cut off SNAP benefits as of last night. What are we doing here? I mean, it's a full crock of shit, and those creators who propagate this line, who complain about people in North Carolina not getting their, grandma or whatever the hell it was, getting the aid that they need, and blaming it on Ukraine are shameless shills. And they also, I would say, have no idea how any of this works. All right, this entire administration has no idea how any of the government works. And also, if you want to get into it on a percentage basis, the aid that we gave to Ukraine, functionally speaking, is not really a whole lot. There's not a whole lot you can do with that to benefit Americans in the long term, right? Not a whole lot. It makes no sense, and it is just as disgusting as when we killed USAID, and everyone said, "Got to help Americans for the $23 million we got rid of." What are we doing here? Now people are starving every day in Africa. They're dying from HIV/AIDS and stuff we could have prevented, and we're just letting them die. And where's that $23 million? I didn't get any direct deposit. It certainly isn't being spent on us. Maybe it's going to the troops in our cities. This whole thing's dumb, and anyone who propagates this line's a moron.
I'm going to be a little more generous, and then we'll switch over to Venezuela. You good with that?
Of course, yes.
All right. So I think the messaging there was very effective because it passes the common sense test. And I think so much boils down to that. When you open the newspaper and hear that, because all of the packages, even when it was military equipment, it was not framed in we sent 273 Humvees to Ukraine. It was the United States aid package is $1.73 billion. It's a dollar figure on that. And yes, when you dig into it, it's equipment, not cash. But that messaging is very easy to turn over and say, like, I'm hurting here. We can't cover our expenses here in town. Tennessee is not doing well, or wherever you live, right? And or just on a personal level of like, I can't find a job. Like, it's so easy to translate that dollar amount to dollars that we utilize day in and day out. And I think for a lot of people that sentiment rings true, where it's, why are we spending so much overseas? Don't we have things here we can resolve? Because we drive through our cities and we see homelessness. And we see that healthcare is still like a shocking cost. Like, we can't figure out some way to do that with the billions we're sending overseas. I understand that. My frustration with it is that it's not a uniform argument. The people that I saw making that argument against Ukraine were not making the same argument about U.S. Money being spent abroad in general. It was just kind of cherry picking that item. Like an aid package would go to Ukraine and people would jump on it and say, this is ridiculous and we can't even deal with veterans in our streets. Meanwhile, there's a large package going to, you name it, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, Taiwan, anywhere around the world. Like, I think that is money well spent. I think that's a net benefit to the United States, and I think it's a lot of bang for the buck. But a lot of the pushback I saw was very isolated on this one thing, which makes me think it was just messaging.
I think you may be right, but I'll also say I think people who buy into that line of thinking, and while I get where I know where it's coming from, I'll also say a little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of looking at numbers, I think could help a lot of people ditch this belief. It's kind of like when people say, well, we need a businessman to run the government. A business is supposed to run a surplus. They're supposed to turn a profit. If the government's turning a profit, they're either taxing me too much or they're not spending the money that they took from me, and they should be spending it, right? So I think it's one of those things where it's like, if people just think about it, if they were just more informed, they'd be in the loop here. But, speaking of government spending our money on things, we just blew up another boat after stealing our thumbnail.
Yeah, I don't know what number this is, so we're going to stop putting numbers on the strikes. 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that. It's happening about once a week. This is the second one this week. It looks like President Trump announced that this was a submarine that we hit this time. The strikes are continuing in Venezuela. There is still no conversation in the United States about this. And it's a mixed bag. I'm scouring the internet looking for clips, trying to find out what senior officials are saying. And across the board, when it comes to Congress, it is all about the shutdown. That's it. That is all they're talking about. And then little aspects of the shutdown. Venezuela does not play into that at all. So it's getting zero attention. Military presence down south has not really increased. It definitely hasn't decreased. And we've got a dynamic right now where not this strike, but the one just prior, I think, or maybe it was this one. Anyways, there were survivors, and 2 people survived, which we haven't had yet, and the U.S. detained them on a Navy vessel and has now repatriated them to, I guess, 1 to Ecuador and 1 to Colombia. And that raises a lot of questions around what, like, we don't, if we strike a vehicle full of ISIS militants in Syria, we don't then say, okay, 2 of them lived, let's land a team, pick them up, and send them back to, I don't know, Yemen and Jordan or something, like where you pick your 2 countries. We detain them, interrogate them, in some cases maybe charge them, or the local country that they're in charges them. This is kind of a unique model. So there's questions raised of, like, why are we not trying them in the United States? Why are we not holding them as enemy prisoners of war? It sounds like Colombia and Ecuador might try to prosecute, but statements from both countries at this point are like, we'll have to look at the evidence. Like, we can't just do it. They're actually going to stand trial. So that one's a little weird. But then it's just piling up down south, man. Let's stop there for a second, because we've also got the top U.S. commander in the south stepping down, and Colombia kind of beating the drum that we killed one of their citizens that they say was a fisherman. But let me stop there for now.
Okay. Are you gonna? Oh, are you
Which direction you want me to go there, Ben? There's so much happening. I don't know. Do you want me to go into the commander, into the? You know what? Colombia. Let's go Colombia.
Okay, I didn't know you were asking me to pick. I thought you were gonna say stop there, and you're pivoting to say something else. I didn't know.
I just felt like I was talking a lot.
No, you're good.
Sorry. So the Colombian president, who's been at odds with President Trump and has generally been a supporter of Maduro, so we need to keep that in mind, came out about a week ago saying there's evidence that one of the strikes killed Colombian citizens.
Okay.
And again, to go back to the ISIS analogy, if they're members of this terrorist organization, does it matter all that much if they're Colombian or Venezuelan or Ecuadorian? Probably not. That doesn't matter when it comes to ISIS or Al Qaeda. Like, until it's an American citizen, then there's additional questions. But the Colombian stance here was that this was a fisherman and that his boat had died and he was adrift, and all of a sudden he got blown up. The challenge we have is that's what Colombia is saying, and the United States is just sticking with, like, no, it was a drug boat. We don't know what else to tell you. And as Petro put out, the president of Colombia just yesterday said, we have confirmed that this was a Colombian boat adrift with its distress signal on, with an engine failure, and it was struck and destroyed by the U.S. He said, we await explanations from the U.S. government, and saying that it was a fisherman who's only ever been a fisherman, and that it was just off the coast of Colombia. President Trump today, seemingly in response to that, put out a note bashing Petro, saying that we are going to stop all subsidies between the United States and them because Petro is an illegal drug dealer, encouraging the production of drugs. Again, I don't know. We don't have any detailed information here, right? It's just when you step back and look at this, and Colombia says, hey, that was a fisherman, and the U.S. response is, we're going to cause economic harm on you, President, for
right.
Like, it feels like it's directly tied to that. This was a 12-hour difference.
It is crazy to me that they seem to be so willy-nilly about this. But all this, they're acting as though they speak like a foreign language. But a lot of Americans speak Spanish, right? And so all this is kind of filtering back up into the United States. It seems to me that this is just not making sense to anyone, right?
That is one of the arguments right now. We've talked a couple times about the legal arguments being used here, and there's a lot of scholars, including one of them, I can't remember the guy's name. He helped put together essentially the torture memo in the early days of the global war on terror, saying enhanced interrogation techniques are totally okay. So the guy that said torture him in Gitmo looked at this and said, hold up, guys, are we sure about this? What happened this week was the Admiral Halsey, in charge of U.S. Southern Command, abruptly retired. And this is raising a lot of speculation that there is, at the very least, some dissent inside of the Pentagon. CNN reported that they had tensions kind of came to a head in early October, with Halsey saying that he would offer his resignation right then and there.
Right.
We've gotten a lot of leaks that there are people inside of DoD wondering about the legality of these strikes. And Halsey's doing the great thing that you would expect from any military official. He's not doing interviews about it. He's not going on the record. It's what he's supposed to do. He's in uniform. He announced his retirement. And he put out a statement. That's what he's going to do. Now, I've seen some pushback here that, well, COCOM commanders change. Combatant commanders change. They do. They change every 3 years. That's not unusual. There were no indications that this guy was not doing a good job or was, like, on the outs. Secretary Hegseth's statement thanked him for his service, all this stuff. He's retiring after 37 years of service. This is the peak of his career. So this is the top. It's not uncommon for people to retire after this position or this level of position. It is unusual for them to retire 1 year into a 3-year assignment. So it takes a while to come up with who's going to be the replacement, get them all up to speed, and make sure there's a smooth transition. And again, this is, in military terms, let's say this is the guy's the governor, right? He worked his way up, or I don't know, maybe president is even a better way to put it. He worked his way up for years and years and years, 4 decades in uniform, reached the pinnacle of his career, and then 1 year in, 30% said, actually, I'm done. That's just not normal.
No.
At all. More than anything, we tend to see people that want to stay on for longer periods of time. That 3-year term is not usually viewed as trying to get people to stay in longer. It's to make sure we rotate them out and get new ideas in. So the timing there is suspect. You can't, if this was any other theater, it'd kind of be a subsection, maybe not a big story. It'd be notable, but not all that much to it. But man, when we're talking about possible war in Venezuela and there's accusations that we're killing citizens, civilians, and there's legal questions around it, to then have the top military commander in the region step down you can't separate that out.
No, it's without a doubt a dissent, I would say. And especially given everything we know, I'd say not a good sign for the legality of these actions, that's for sure.
I mean, it raises a good conversation about what do you expect from military commanders in this role. And there's not a great answer here. Is if he viewed this as a violation of his oath, is it incumbent upon him to leave or to stay and push back while he still has the ability to do so? And I don't know that there's a perfect answer there.
Well, my take on it is that it is a way to avoid legal collateral. Because as the New York Times reported, there are members of the Southern Command down there, individual service members, who are asking for written orders because they believe that the orders may not be legal. And so they're asking for written orders as a way to protect them from prosecution. And so him stepping away, to me, says kind of everything you need to know, right?
Yeah, I mean, we should take a note and remove Admiral Halsey from the lawsuit that we have around the IP theft. If he's going to step down, yeah.
Yep, I agree.
There's rumors that it might have been our litigation that led to his early retirement. I can't confirm or deny that reporting.
Well, yeah, the U.S. government's scared of us. They're going to have to sign NSPM 8. It's going to be about investigating the Unclassified podcast. But speaking of investigating our sources of funding, we have questions from our members and our viewers. So we got Jake the Snake back again. He says, are the new press restrictions handed out by the Pentagon something you guys in your community are talking about? And how big of a deal do you guys think it is?
Mixed. I would say yes, people in the community are talking about it to a degree, but we're also kind of in this new media space where, like, I'll speak for myself, I did not have access to the Pentagon. Even in the past administration, when I got to go on a trip with them out west, I was not in, like, regular communication with them like the press officers in the Pentagon are. I just, this week, for the first time emailed the Pentagon asking for a comment on a video I was doing, to no response. So like, I lean heavily on a lot of the work those reporters were doing, but technically the other creators that I'm in and around, not necessarily a direct impact. In terms of what does it mean, I had an interview with Chris Marr earlier this week that was the former assistant to the SecDef for Public Affairs, so the guy working with the press. And I think we kind of talked through a couple different ways of what this meant, and I think where I landed is it's more of a signal than it is an impact on media, in that these guys are still going to call the Pentagon to run their stories. They still have their same sources out in the force. They still have their anonymous sources, or their the people that they go to off the record. They all have phones and emails. So like they're still gonna. In fact, since they were kicked out of the Pentagon, the story about Admiral Halsey broke. So like that's probably the biggest story we've had in months, and it's after all of the Pentagon, except for like Epoch Times and OAN, were removed. The Pentagon also has not been doing press briefings. So they've done like 5 this year, I think, in total. So the press that are there don't even get the opportunity to engage with DOD at baseline. So I think it's significant in that we're seeing the government kind of add additional restrictions onto the press in a way that they, I think, kind of expected a lot of organizations to say there's no way we're going to do that. It adds to this adversarial relationship that I don't think is good for us as a country. But in terms of what it means for reporting, I think we're going to get the same information we were prior. And what we've gotten for the last 9 months is stories come out, and then the Pentagon will say this is fake news. And the story will say, like, we reached out to you, and you didn't respond. We got nothing from you, so we ran with what we had. And then the Pentagon will say fake news, it's made up. I think that's probably going to be the same thing for a period of time here.
I agree with you. Have you tried calling the Pentagon lately?
I've never tried calling the Pentagon.
Oh, so during the last...
I had Jennifer Min was their digital media lead, and she's the one that helped set up my trip out west with them in last December, I think it was, December or November. I talked to her a couple times, but actually most of the time she was asking for, like, do you know any other creators that would like to go on this event, or can you put me in touch with this person that wants to go on this event? It wasn't really anything. It was never anything about like actual stories or topics.
So during the last administration, during the Ukraine stuff, and you'd always get these random comments, or like random events that happens. I used to just call the public affairs officers because their phone numbers used to just be on the website, right? So I would just call and I would ask questions. And I haven't tried that this admin. I don't think they'll have anything to say to me, even if it's the same people, But it was very helpful, and a lot of people don't know you can just call and ask questions, and sometimes they answer them. But I will say, one of the shadiest experiences in my life was calling the Special Forces press officer, because, the phone line sounds staticky, so you get the feeling that it's definitely tapped, right? And you're like, what is going on here? And they're like, who are you with? Why are you asking? How did you hear this? And I was like, dog, it's on the front page of the London Times. Like, what are you coming at me for? What do you, like, I have secret information. Your guy said it. It was after the U.S. General said that the SAS was conducting special forces operations inside of Russia. And they acted like I had, broken to the Pentagon, and I found out, and I was being sly by calling to find out. And I was like, dog, it's on the front page of international newspapers. But our next question here is, Preston, how do you maintain your bubbly, exuberant personality? It's got 10 likes, too.
I like that. Surrounded by good people, I guess. Wonderful family. Good friends. Good dog that's down here licking too much today. I'd say, I don't know, just trying to stay positive as best I can. I'd say I'm generally an optimistic person at baseline, so.
That is an interesting one. On the topic of refusing orders, so this person asked, if the 82nd was ordered to deploy onto an American city with the gear and weapons they would normally use in a conflict zone, do you think it would be possible for its CO to refuse that order?
Yes, it is possible. We have mechanisms throughout to do that. But this is also one of the reasons why these lawsuits that are going up about the National Guard and the use of forces are so important, because you really don't want that commander to have to make that decision. It puts them in a very difficult spot. The reason it is so important to not cross this line and not give orders that could be legal or illegal is there's a requirement in the military to act with a violence of action. Like when you were given that order, you go. And you can break that all the way down to a squad on an assault. When the squad leader says, you move into the building on the right, I'm going to go to the left, you have to trust him and know that he knows something maybe that you don't, has a little bit more information, and is doing what's needed to succeed in that mission and to protect his people. You don't have time when you're stacked on that door to say, wait a minute, was this the building where on the second floor no, go, man. And if you don't go, lives are at risk. And that works its way all the way up the chain to where when the president or the secretary of defense gives an order, you want to be able to believe it, trust it, know that it is a legal order, and carry it out. Again, you can extrapolate that out into large-scale armed conflict. At what point do you not respond to a missile attack? At what point do you not engage enemy threats? So you really, really, really want that trust to be there and know that you would never be asked to do something that has not been absolutely verified as legal before. So the fact that we're even having to wonder about that is actually a very, very, very big problem. Yes, every person in the military has the ability and technically the responsibility to decline and not follow an illegal order. Nobody has immunity from that up and down the chain of command. The challenge would be that you would not see an order here. We've already seen this. There would not be an order, I would assume, of 82nd Airborne's jumping into Chicago, shoot everybody that's brown. Because they'd be like, wait a minute, that sounds highly illegal. Nothing about that sounds okay. And it'd be so clearly wrong that it would be very easy to stand up against. The challenge would be in those middle grounds where it's, again, Portland has been declared a war zone, right? And some National Guard troops were given the order to deploy to that war zone. And we had a judge come out and say, what are you talking about? But in that time, between when the order was given and the troops started to mobilize to move out, how are they going to question that? Right? A battalion commander, brigade commander, division commander does not have the same level of insight that the President of the United States has. So that's where we really, really need some of these judges to step in and make sure there are these necessary checks. We end up very quickly in like very nasty, very difficult conversations there.
Preston, do you think that you might follow in Chris Cappy's footsteps and find yourself in Ukraine anytime soon?
We're talking about a couple trips now, so it's been a tough one for me, man. It's something I go back and forth on a lot. My wife Megan has been very supportive of my going over there. There was a trip I was going to go on in May with a couple good friends that they ended up down in Pokrovsk, like literally dodging Russian FPVs. Like one of the guys ended up with a shotgun in the back of a truck shooting at Russian FPVs as they were chasing them down the road. Like, well, hold on. I don't want to do that. That doesn't, I'm not helping anybody. Like, I don't need to get shot at again. I'm good. So they went in a little deeper than I probably would. But it's something I struggle with because I want to, and there's so many people I want to meet there. I also want to go to the front and see the front in so many different areas. But that's also kind of selfish. Like, I don't know what that really helps. And there's a part of me, something that I weigh constantly is that's, a week to 2 week trip. And I wonder the value of that. This is going to sound weird, but like the value of that to the audience versus being here and being able to kind of soak in information and relay to help keep people up to speed with what's changing day in and day out. There's not a perfect answer. The answer is I need to go, and I'm looking at a trip this winter. And lots of wonderful people, either there who have made a lot of trips back and forth that have offered assistance in getting there, getting back, contacts. And I think I'll probably go here in the next month or two with a plan of spending a lot of time around Kyiv, mostly, and just meeting a lot of the people that I've been able to interact with over the last couple of years.
That's very exciting. What if you die?
Thanks, Ben. Megan listens to this.
Well, I think it's. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a weird feeling with all of this too. Is like unnecessarily putting yourself in harm's way. What is that? I don't know. I don't know that I can make the logical jump. And to be clear, Ukraine is under missile and drone attack every single day. Yes. And while there are casualties in Kyiv regularly, it's limited compared to people out at the front. And there's a lot of people that have lived in Kyiv throughout the entire war and have never been wounded or close to being wounded, right? So it's not like you're under constant artillery fire while you're there, but it is also very, very far from perfectly safe. I don't know that I'll be able to make it to a perfectly rational decision on this one, but emotionally, I feel like I need to get over there.
I respect it. I think it's very honorable. But we do have a last question here. Have you guys ever eaten a stroopwafel? Stroopwafel? Yeah. Sometimes you get them on planes. They're like all right.
They're fine. My grandparents on my mom's side used to travel to Europe a lot, I think. And that's one of the things they would bring back were stroopwafels.
Really?
Yeah, and they had a store in Urbana, Illinois, and they'd sell them, and it was kind of like a novelty because Amazon wasn't a thing, so you couldn't just jump online and order. It was the kind of thing where I remember having friends over at the house, and we'd crack into those, and they'd never seen it before, heard of them before. It's like, what is this little waffle full of honey thing? But yeah, we used to get them a little bit when I was little. It's been a while since I've had one, but I think I should probably pick some up for Ed, and my daughter would hammer one of those.
They're like, I mean, I only get them on flights. They hand them out sometimes.
What flights are you on? I feel like I've never...
like on United? You
really?
Haven't gotten a stroopwafel? And maybe on Lufthansa once I got it too. But that's like the German.
See, that's
airline.
a little more niche, yeah.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening. We do have memberships available. We'll be rolling out, I think, is a big development.
I'm excited about that.
I mean, not to be grim about it, but if you do enroll in the biggest membership tier we have, you will get invited to Preston's funeral should he die in Ukraine. So remember to enroll in that and reserve your spot now. We'll even let you sit in the front row. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.